Hello, and welcome to the Patience to Prosperity podcast, where we learn how to act in opposition of our limiting beliefs in order to reach our fullest potential. Hey guys, it's Lizzie, and today's going to be a little bit of a heavier concept. But if you saw that addiction was in this title, I want you to know before we even get into today's topic that you don't have to be a person who is necessarily addicted to something in order to gain some perspective from this episode. You can know someone who has dealt with addiction because that personally affects you as an individual, and we will talk about that today. You can have underlying addictions that are just not seen as something that is as harmful in today's society, such as social media. All that being said, today we're going to talk about what addiction truly is, how we can classify ourselves as addicted to something, the psychology that actually goes behind it. Because I think, and maybe this is just me being more interested in it because I am studying psychology right now, and the brain is something that's really interesting to me. But the reason why I went down the psych route in general and why I'm so passionate about learning more about it is because I felt like psychology gave me purpose behind my pain. And let me explain that for a little bit, because it does pertain to addiction as well. Even though my hurt was not from being an addict, being someone who has experienced high levels of depression, has experienced suicidal thoughts, has really been in a deep depressive state, and anxiety has controlled a lot of my life. Since I struggled with my mental health so much in the past, being able to lean into psychology in the sense that I now am able to look from a scientific perspective on how my brain was wired at the time and why it made me think certain things, why it made certain behaviors harder to break and others harder to build up. Being able to look at it and actually have science to support it gave me a sense of reassurance. It made me feel like I had a breath of fresh air for the first time, like I wasn't just crazy. Because even though so many people go through addictions, so many people go through depression, and we deal with anxiety on a larger scale, that doesn't take away from how isolating it can feel, from how you can feel like you are the only person that is experiencing these things. And knowing that there are certain brain pathways and brain structures and neurons that our brains end up wiring themselves to condition our thoughts, it just gave me a lot of reassurance through my own healing journey. So that's why it kind of drove me to sit on here and talk to you guys about it today. Because if you're someone who's experiencing depression, who has an addict in your life, who is currently addicted to social media, to drugs, to any sort of substance, or to anything, you can be addicted to anything, even if it's not technically classified as an addictive substance, quote unquote. It's important to understand what things we might be addicted to and managing them from here on out, and I'm going to help you do so today. So I first want to start off with the actual definition of addiction. I got this right off the internet, and it says, addiction is a chronic psychiatric disorder that involves changes in the brain's reward, motivation, and memory systems. It's characterized by an inability to control behavior and a dysfunctional emotional response. So I am going to go into a little bit of the psychology of the brain, since that definition kind of set that framework for us. So just to understand this, I'm not going to get super scientific. I'm not going to throw the most drastic scientific terms at you, but I do think that it's important to kind of understand the way that our own brains work when we become dependent on things to regulate our emotions. Because sometimes when we are addicted to things, we tell ourselves, but it helps me de-stress, but it helps me feel some sort of peace of mind. When in reality, it's actually doing the opposite, and we are dependent on that substance to regulate our minds and our bodies, when in reality, we should be able to do that ourselves without another substance to help us de-stress at the end of the day. So when we are addicted to something, there is a little bit of a weak brain path in our brain's decision-making center, which is found in your prefrontal cortex. So, as with almost anything in life, trying a drug is a decision. Opening your phone and clicking on social media is a decision. Every single thing that leads to addiction also starts with making a decision to invest ourselves in this thing. So once that decision is made in your brain's prefrontal cortex, then when we consume a drug, for example, this is where I'm going to use substances as an example right now for addictions, but take any example that doesn't apply to you as exactly that, just an example of addiction, because it can apply to other addictions even if you are not addicted to a substance that is consumed through your lungs, through your body, through your veins. It can still be consumed through your brain if it's something like social media. So, going off of that, according to Psychology Today, once this drug is consumed, the drug delivers a powerful stimulus to the nucleus accumbens, which is a cluster of nerve cells below the cerebral cortex, which responds quickly by releasing a flood of dopamine. And it is very vital to note this last part that I just said, that it is quickly stimulating your brain with dopamine. Emphasis on quickly. So dopamine is a neurotransmitter, and I often hear dopamine being something that is demonized. Everything that gives us fast dopamine is bad, but that's not to say that dopamine is actually bad. It's just a chemical that drives your motivation to do things. So, obviously, dopamine is going to have more of a negative effect on you when it floods in as a response to an action that you decided to partake in that is doing more harm than good to your brain or body. Because that dopamine is then acting as this reinforcement that you should do this thing again, because dopamine feels good. It gives us motivation to do things, like I said. So now that you have trained yourself that this thing feels good to you, you're going to keep coming back to it. And this leads to our pleasure pathways. So since the sensation of dopamine is so direct, meaning that it's fast acting and it immediately stimulates your nucleus, the action is then repeated. And the more that you repeat this action, the more that you are creating new neural pathways in your brain that are in support of continuing this behavior. And dependency is really the root of addiction. Your body becomes dependent on it to the sense where sometimes you get to a point where you don't even actually like this action anymore. Maybe smoking is something that you are addicted to right now. You might get to a point where you don't actually like smoking anymore, where you actually see more harm than good in it. But now your body is so dependent on it that if you try to go a day without it, you have a headache, you have body chills, you feel sick to your stomach because you have trained your body to be accustomed to this thing being a daily part of your routine in your life. It is completely dependent on it. So therefore, you can become more addicted to the frequency of dopamine stimulating your brain rather than being actually addicted to the substance. So now that we have covered a lot of the psychology that is involved in addiction, I kind of want to branch out into what they call the 4 C's of addiction. And these are sort of the stages that one goes through when they experience dependency on an action, a substance, a thing, whatever it may be. So the first C is craving. So these 4 C's kind of allow you to understand how one becomes addicted to something. So the first C is craving. Once you start to crave this thing, it becomes a desire to you. If you are someone who has never smoked before, but now all of a sudden you have these thoughts that are trying to get you to smoke, you are now experiencing that first C where you are craving this thing. It was not even on your radar before, but now all of a sudden you're having thoughts about it. And your brain might be trying to convince you that this thing is going to make you feel better in some way. And that leads to compulsion. Compulsion is our second C. And with compulsion, it is an obsession. It sort of convinces you that whatever action you are partaking in does make you feel better in some way. And that only reinforces you to do it more and more, like I said in the beginning, which then leads to the third C, which is control. You might tell yourself that you are controlling this thing, even though it's controlling you more. And that can lead to not being in control at all. Maybe not being able to do regular everyday things without needing to smoke before and after it, without needing to scroll on social media in between studying, and not just being able to put your phone down because of this compulsion that comes in. But then the control that comes in after that is you telling yourself that you are in control of this addiction. And then that leads to our fourth C, which is consequences. The consequences of this false sense of control are now that you are dependent on this thing. You are completely complacent on it. You depend on it to get everything done. And some other consequences can be it affecting your relationships with other people in your life. Because obviously your loved ones can pick up on the fact that you are dependent on this thing. And that's going to make them feel like they need to kind of come in between you and this addiction in order to help you and get you back to a state of mind where you don't have to depend on this thing. Every time that someone tries to come in between you and an addiction, it's always from a place of love. But you can absolutely find yourself, if you are someone who is dealing with addiction or someone else that you are trying to help with addiction, being very resistant of help. And sometimes even dismissive of others. Sometimes you can take it out on other people, especially if you are an addict and something is affecting your brain pathways. You might respond out of anger. You might lash out on people a lot because you're not really in your right mind right now, in the sense of you are coming further and further from yourself every single time you are depending on something else to regulate your emotions. Hey guys, I'm popping in here today to let you guys know that I have partnered up with Mudwater. I am an avid coffee drinker. If you know me at all, one of the main things you probably know about me is that I am a coffee addict. I really cannot go a day without it. For so long now, I've been reaching for an alternative to coffee because, you know, coffee can give you the jitters sometimes. It can make you crash. It can impact your sleep. And although it might give me a boost of energy throughout my day, I've really been searching for something that gives me that same boost of energy, but doesn't lead to crashing in the early afternoon and feeling super anxious throughout my day or having trouble sleeping at night. And something that I think really helps support healthy levels of energy throughout my day that help me attack whatever challenge comes up is by starting my mornings off with drinking mud water. Now, I want to let you guys know that whatever brand I ever promote on this podcast is always going to be a brand that I have reaped the benefits of and that I genuinely think has the consumer's best interest at heart. I would never sit on here and preach about a product that I don't genuinely believe in. That being said, mud water is 100% organic. Their coffee alternative is 100% organic cacao, masala chai, a blend of mushrooms like lion's mane, cordyceps, and reishi. You can do your own research on those mushrooms because I know that mushrooms can be a little bit scary to us in the beginning, but I've done a lot of research on my own even before working with this product, and I want you guys to know that mud water is not a supplement. It is simply just an alternative to your daily coffee that you are drinking, or just an additive to that coffee. Sometimes I like to add it to my daily coffee to support my cognitive brain function throughout the day. Because if you're anything like me and you experience brain fog a lot or anxiety a lot from coffee, then supporting that cognitive brain function through things like lion's mane is just one way in which you can pour self-love into yourself through drinking mud water. I will put the link to their website and the code for 15% off any mud water product in the show notes below. But if you are looking for that code directly, go to mudwater.com/LizzieArduino to come on this journey with me. That's mudwtr.com/LizzieArduino. And if you guys purchase the starter kit, which is what got me hooked onto mud water in the first place, so I highly recommend it. It is delicious and you can make such fun drinks with it. If you go on their website, they also have a bunch of fun recipes. So if you choose to purchase that starter kit and subscribe, you will receive $20 off plus the $15 discount using my link. So take that to your advantage and start drinking mud water today. Back to the pod. So that leads me to the fact that every single time that I feel as though something is controlling me more than I am controlling it. And I'm going to take social media as my example because social media was curated purposefully for it to stimulate our brains at a level, at a speed that nothing has ever been able to do before. So obviously people are going to be addicted to it. Obviously it's going to be hard to get off our phones. Obviously it's going to be hard to just completely get off of social media and act like we don't need it to connect with others anymore. So whenever I feel like my social media usage is not being controlled by me, but rather I'm reaching for my phone every 2 seconds, even when I'm doing something else. And it's taking me away from the present moment. And I'm constantly, coming back to social media and using it as a way to fill time and space and to stimulate my brain as a way to escape boredom. Because I think honestly, with social media being so present in our lives, we are now more than ever so uncomfortable with boredom. And I think boredom is so important. We are supposed to find little times throughout our day where we're not completely stimulated. We are not supposed to constantly being fed things one after another. Sometimes things are supposed to be boring because that's when we're able to hear our thoughts the clearest. That's when our most creative selves can come out. That's when our most intuitive thoughts can come through, is when we are not doing anything sometimes, is when we are just completely present right now and we're not so reliant on something else giving us stimulation. So honestly, the only way that has helped me kind of have a control over my social media usage has been going cold turkey. I find that the only thing that works for me is deleting social media platforms off of my phone when they're controlling me. Because what that does now is it proves to myself that I can be a functioning human being without this thing distracting me every day, without this thing giving me stimulation every single day. And what I find is how much time I am robbing of myself every single day by indulging in this compulsive behavior. I've never regretted taking a break from social media. It has only amplified how much I've needed to take that break more and more every single time I do it. And I know that's easier said than done to just go cold turkey and to cut your addiction out completely. But that leads me to say that in order to cut something out, sometimes we have to replace it with something else. And that's not to say, if you're a drug addict, to replace it with another drug. Instead of smoking at the regular time that you do every single day, maybe replace that with opening up your journal now and making it and building that habit that now this is journal time rather than smoke time. In order to break habits, you have to also build new habits. And eventually your brain is going to do the same thing that it did while it builds up that addiction for you. It's going to create new neural pathways that are now building a habit for you that is actually benefiting you more than this addiction was. And that's not to say that this is going to be easy or that it's going to work the first, the second, or even the third time. But the more and more that you do it, the more you teach yourself that it is working towards your highest self, that it is working in your best interest. Even if it doesn't feel so good in the moment, every single time that you are done journaling, and I know that's just an example here, but every single time you close that journal, just honing in on that initial feeling of release that it gives you, that initial feeling of peace that might flood through you, even if it's fleeting, even if it's just for a second, honing in on that and trying to really hold on to that for as long as you can is going to help you repeat that behavior and build that good habit for you over time. So going back to my tactic of going cold turkey and deleting social media off my phone, one of the reasons why I think this works so well is because it teaches you that you don't need this thing to survive. It teaches you that you can be a functioning human being without it, even if it's hard at first. The more and more that you do it, the longer you withstand without it, the stronger your belief that you can live without this thing is going to be. And the less likely you are to go back to it and to depend on it. Because now you're proving to yourself that you can live a life without it. That it does not define you, that you do not have to identify with it. And I think that also might be a really hard factor of addiction is the identity aspect of it. When you are identifying yourself as someone who is reliant on something else to make you feel better, it makes you feel like shit about yourself. It makes you feel weak. It makes you feel like a failure. And that doesn't always necessarily put you right back on your feet and give you the motivation to then change the way that you're living your life and go without this thing and try to better yourself from here on out. It makes you accept defeat, accept failure sometimes, and think, well, since I'm already a failure, I might as well just give myself this 20 minutes of quote unquote bliss that this substance or that this thing gives me every single day because I'm already a failure, because I'm already weak and it doesn't matter. But dependency doesn't equal weakness. It really doesn't. And I know it can feel that way sometimes, but we become dependent on other people. We become dependent on certain things to help self-soothe us and make us feel better. Even as babies, we're dependent on a binky to help self-soothe us. We, as humans, in our human nature, in our blood, we depend on other things to make us feel better. And that doesn't mean that we are weak. It just means that we are failing to see how much power there is within us to regulate our emotions, to help us feel at home within ourselves. I feel like we often hear people say, especially with nicotine and vaping being such a prominent topic of discussion, I guess you can say nowadays, because it's so normalized that everyone has a vape in their hand nowadays. We hear so many people say, oh, I can quit, I just don't want to. And I'm going to get into that a little bit. I honestly think that just as deciding to consume something is a decision, it is also a decision to break that cycle and to stop consuming. So I think in some ways it is fair, and I think that you can 100% say, yeah, I just don't really want to stop. That doesn't mean that I'm addicted. But it's such a wishy-washy kind of statement to make, because at the same time, if you know that this thing is doing more harm than good for you, and you are simply still doing it, still consuming it, still actively making the decision to do it every single time, then that becomes a form of self-sabotage. You know that it's not good for you. You know it's doing more harm than good. And the only reason now that you are doing it is because of this false sense of control that you have on it. This false sense of regulation that it is giving to your emotions. Because it's not actually regulating your emotions. It's just giving you some sort of escapism, if anything, at best. The only thing it is doing is helping you escape from your problems, helping you escape from the reason why you are doing it in the first place. Because addictions are deeper rooted than that. There's a reason why you need to self-soothe outside of yourself, why you have gone to something else to do that for you. Maybe it's because your deeply rooted traumas have not been addressed in your life and you are still unhealed and you still have things that you need to address. Maybe it's because a recent situation just came up that triggered a past trauma of yours and amplified it for you. And instead of doing the inner work to look at that from a more healed perspective and try to reach yourself on the level that you're at right now, you are kind of shaming yourself. And that shame is causing you to go to things outside of yourself to help regulate your emotions. There are so many different factors that go into addiction, and it's a really, really hefty topic to cover. But I kind of just wanted to talk about all of the mindset stuff that goes in behind it, all of the things we tell ourselves when we are addicted, and the psychology behind it, the normalcy that we often see amplified, especially in the media, by certain things. I know we talked about vaping as one of them and social media as another one of them. Those things are so normalized in today's society because so many people go to them to self-soothe. But just because so many people are doing them doesn't mean that it's good for you, doesn't mean that it's right, and doesn't mean that it is helping you. Because at the end of the day, no substance is going to help you more than your own dedication to yourself and your healing journey at the end of the day. And your own open-mindedness to receiving all of the lessons that are shown to you every single day. All of that stuff is so much more vital to your healing process, is going to be able to truly help you through your emotions that feel really heightened right now, that feel like they need to be released. Because if you are someone that tells yourself, yeah, smoking a little weed at the end of the day helps me get the edge off, it's worth maybe just assessing whether it actually does or not. Because you might just be telling yourself it does. But at the end of the day, the fact that you need to go to this thing every single day in order to quote unquote take the edge off means that the edge has never been taken off for you. Because every single day, you shouldn't have to take the edge off. Life shouldn't feel that heavy to you every single day. You are just not giving yourself what you need every single day to help come back to yourself, to help actually identify what emotions are spiraling through your head right now. What is making you feel so out of your body? What is making you feel so upset and so down right now that you have to go to something else to just make you feel a different way? Addiction is a form of escapism. It's escaping from yourself. It's escaping from your problems. It's escaping from reality. And nothing is ever going to be easier by escaping it. You have to face your problems. So by trying to run away from them and telling yourself that indulging in this thing every single day helps take the edge off and it's actually helping you function more throughout your life, is you literally lying to yourself, outwardly lying to yourself. You are just slowing down your healing process by not facing your problems head on and thinking that this thing is helping you actually move through them, when in reality you are relying solely on feelings right now. And if you rely solely on feelings in this life, you are never going to get anything done. Because we're not always going to feel like going to work every day. We're not always going to feel like submitting an application to give ourselves the opportunity to grow. You are not always going to feel like doing something, but that doesn't mean that the thing that might come out of it is not going to be worth it. It is 9 times out of 10 going to be completely worth it if it brings you outside of your comfort zone a little bit, to have to face it, to have to put yourself out there a little bit more. Going outside of your comfort zone always leads to growth, and it's the only way you're going to grow. If you live your life exactly how you are right now and you are completely comfortable with always staying the same, you are always going to feel this existential dread over you. You are always going to feel like you need to take the edge off every single day to escape yourself and to escape the world around you. That is not how you were meant to live this life. You are not put here to try to escape life. And I honestly see that really prominently through the work culture that we have created. It is so normalized now to live a 9 to 5, to have to come home and quote unquote take the edge off with a glass of wine or with a joint or by scrolling through social media. That is all escapism. And another form of escapism that we have enlisted into our weekly routine, into our work routines even, our school life, whatever it might be, we look at the weekends as a form of escaping our daily lives. But those weekends are fleeting. They come every week, yes, but they're only here for 2 days. And now we have to face reality all over again every single time that work week comes back up on a Monday, if that's your traditional work week. But like I just said, we are not put here to constantly be escaping reality, to constantly be escaping the present moment. We are actually put here to do the exact opposite. We're put here to be as present as possible. We're put here to be, not to accomplish. You are meant to live this life as presently as you possibly can and to focus solely on what is put out in front of you right here, right now. We're not put here to be looking forward to that smoke at the end of the day. we're put here to be investing our attention fully on what is going on right in front of us at work, at school, in class, while talking to a friend, while sitting down and eating, while reading a book. Whatever it is, every single thing you do, just try to do it as presently as you possibly can. And I talked a lot about that in my last episode from last week. So go check that out if you need, honestly, some food for thought right now. If you really need to dive a little inner, and if this felt like more of an attack on you than anything, I really highly suggest you listening to my last episode, because it will feel like more of a warm hug than this episode will, which I didn't mean for this episode to feel like an attack, so I apologize if it came off that way. But at the same time, if what I was saying today felt like an attack to you, that is evidence in itself that there is a deeper rooted issue that you need to address in your life right now. That you need to dive deeper right now, understand, ask yourself where this addiction came from in the first place, why you're so dependent on it, what are the things you tell yourself. If someone were to come up to you right now and ask why you haven't quit yet, what would you say? Where did that stem from in the first place? What was the first moment that you decided to make the decision to indulge in this thing that is now more of an addiction to you? Where did that decision stem from? What did you tell yourself when you decided to do that? Ask yourself questions. Just keep asking questions. Become so curious with yourself, because that is truly how you give yourself clarity at the end of the day, how you give yourself reassurance, how you find peace of mind, and you meet yourself with a level of understanding and love rather than shame. You can't shame yourself into change. You can only love yourself into evolution. So that is all I have for you guys today, and I really hope you guys got something from this episode. Everything I said today didn't come from a place of insensitivity. I hope you know that everything that I sat on here and spoke to you guys about today came from either past experience within myself that I expressed to you through social media and things like that, or from seeing loved ones in my life go through addictions. Addictions are something that are so normalized, but at the same time, like I said, can feel so isolating. You feel so caught up in your own head. And if the only thing you got out of today's episode was that you feel a little bit less alone in this journey, then I did my part here. So thank you guys again for listening. Please share this episode with someone who might need to hear it. Maybe send them a nice little text telling them, I'm sending you this not because I think you need to change yourself, but because I love you so much that I know you're deserving of more. And you can only give that to yourself at the end of the day. With that being said, if you guys enjoyed this episode or you've just been enjoying the show, feel free to shoot me a DM. Feel free to leave me a 5-star rating or review on this podcast, because it really does help me expand my community and reach like-minded people just like you. But that's all I have for you guys today. I can't wait for you guys to hear next week's episode. And yeah, stay tuned every Monday for a brand new episode. As always, come as you are and leave a little more healed.